Hi everybody, Carissa here and welcome back to my YouTube channel, Winky Fairy Designs. I have another Maker Forte project for you today. We're going to make this cute little card and I'm going to show you first the products that I'm using, which aren't a lot, but here is the card. It is a standard A2 size card and we're just going to do a lot of watercoloring. I am using this stamp set by Maker Forte, designed by Jess Francisco, and it is called Bear With Me. It's a great 6x8 stamp set with some large images and then a lot of fun, punny sentiments to go along with it. I'm also using this slimline stencil by Varada Shana Designs. It's the Clouds stencil, and I love the stencils from Maker Forte because you get like the negative and the positive, if that makes sense. So you can use either or. I am using watercolor paper by Prima today. It's a cold press paper, and I am using this one Neptune Princeton watercolor brush. It's a round number 4, I believe. And then the watercolors I'm using today are handmade. Got them on Instagram by 31 Purple Fish. So if you want to check out their Instagram, it's 31 Purple Fish. And you can check out their watercolors. I've kind of gotten a little obsessed with them. I love the little colors that they come out with, and I just love supporting family-owned small business companies like them and Maker Forte. So I'm going to start by, I stamped my bears on the watercolor paper, and then I just took the stencil. You can see I'm laying it out, and I'm taking a water-soluble pencil and just tracing around, creating my different cloud layers that I'm going to now start to color in with my watercolors. So I have 2 jars of water always when I'm watercoloring, kind of like my dirty jar. You can see on the left, and then a clean one that I can rinse when I'm changing colors. And I have I have a paper towel off to the side that you'll see, and then I have a little porcelain palette that I can bring color in and kind of water it down, dilute it, or even do mixing, which I'll do in a little bit on the background here. But I'm starting by just some clean water, and I'm spreading it all around that first layer of cloud area that I want to start coloring. And then I'm going to pick up some of that color off of my palette, and I'm going to drop it in and let it blend out. And that is pretty much the gist of my coloring today. It is a wet on wet technique. That is my favorite technique if you have watched any of my watercoloring videos in the past. This is what I love to do, and I generally just keep it one layer. I will drop in color here and there to deepen it up at the bottom, and then I soften it by just some clean water on the edges as I bring it up to that second layer of cloud area on my panel. And so here you'll see I'm dropping in just little bits of water and letting it do its thing. Watercoloring for me is very relaxing, and I just love to let it blend and spread on its own. I don't like to fuss with it. If I do, I end up overworking it, and then I lose the beauty of what I love about watercolor, and that is this very loose, almost not messy, but just very loose style. And so I like that. Before I start on my next cloud layer, I'm going to go ahead and skip down to the grass where the bears are sitting. And I've talked about this before, why I skip around a lot. But first I did spray my watercolors with some water just to kind of activate them. I don't need to do that with a lot of, with all the watercolors. I don't do that with every single set I have or every single brand, but I do find that with the homemade watercolors or handmade watercolors, it is helpful to kind of activate them with some water, and then I can pull up the pigment a little bit easier as I'm painting, and it'll dry So you kind of have to do it a few times depending on how long your painting takes. But just spraying it with some water helps to kind of activate it, and then it will be easier to kind of bring to your paper or to your palette. And so I'm just adding some shadows right underneath the bears to provide some grounding for them. And then again, I just smooth it out with some clean water. And you can see my daughter was stamping with me, so she was showing me her coloring off to the side. That's what was coming in on the little corner area. She wanted me to stamp these bears out, and she colored them too, which was so cute. So I tend to do that. If she's up while I am crafting, she'll always see me stamping, and then she wants to stamp, so she'll say, "Mommy, I want to stamp." And so I just stamp whatever I'm stamping and hand it off to her, and then that keeps her occupied, and I can make whatever I'm working on. So here I am mixing a little bit of the red and the yellow. This is from the boho collection that 31 Purple Fish has. And so the red is Potter's Pink and the yellow was their gold ochre. And so I mixed those together just a tad to kind of create a more peachy color. And then I will go in and just add more of that yellow ochre, which is one of my favorite colors. I'm not a warm tone color, like I don't gravitate towards those, but I love a good yellow ochre, and this one is really, really pretty. So now I'm going to mix a little bit more just to give that really kind of depth to the bottom of that cloud. So adding some deeper color towards the bottom of your cloud layer is going to give you dimension. It's going to make that layer pop out from behind of the cloud in front of it. So I really try to add some depth at the bottom. And here I am going in wet into my layer right next to a layer that I just painted. So it's still wet, and you'll see that it starts to blend into that area. So that is, I talk about that I like to skip around so that that doesn't happen, and I didn't take my advice. Or you can heat set, like you can use a heat tool to dry layers before moving into layers next to them. But for this one, I was okay with it because it was a cloud, it's a sky, it's a background, and I actually really like the way that the colors are blending into each other. So when that happened, I was like, okay, I'm going to work with this. I'm going to keep going because I really, really liked how that looked. And then I just kind of kept some white space closer to the top of the clouds because I liked the blending, but I didn't want it to blend too much. So I tried to kind of steer clear a little bit of it. But I did mix some, I think it was the Delft blue with the Potter's Pink, and created kind of a deeper pink, purple area for the sky. And then I think I am going to color in the bottom little cloud. Yeah, and so for that, I'm using a color that isn't in the boho collection. It is called Azurite 1, and it is this beautiful blue granulating color. And so I decided to just kind of do the blue at the bottom, and then it would kind of fade into my sunset there. And that first layer of clouds that I colored already is pretty much dry, so I'm able to go in and do this bottom layer. And then again, when my paper is all wet in the area that I want it to be, I will take some pigment directly from the pan and just drop it in and let it move on its own, creating a lot of depth and movement down there in the bottom, which I just love. Alright, so I think I'm going to go in and do the top layer. And so I'm adding quite a bit of that ochre to a bit of the Potter's Pink. And so you can really create a lot of different colors with a small palette here. You can see I'm working with 8 colors, and I've created a lot of different levels or shades of color, pretty much using just 3 colors for the sky. No, 4. I think 4 colors with the sky. And so just like adding bits of the colors together on a palette. That's why I like to have like a small porcelain palette off to the side, and then I can mix colors together right there and create some different layers that way. And I really, really love how the sky is turning out. And it was just fun to kind of use the stencil to create the layers of clouds that I wanted, instead of normally I would just kind of blend in the sky in the background with the watercolors, and there wouldn't be like that puffy kind of cloud shape. I would just kind of blend all together, which is a cool look too. But I love how these little penciled in clouds look from using the stencil first. So I think I will use that a lot more on backgrounds that I create this way, because it was just really easy to do. You could even erase away those lines if you didn't get watercolor over them. You could erase those away, but I used a water soluble pencil, so most of it went away and you can still see a little bit, but I think that just adds to the character and the handmade look of the card itself. So now I'm coming in, I'm going to color in the bears using a brown and a gray color, and I'm just doing the same technique that I used in the sky. So I coated the bear with just some water first, and then I start to bring in the color from the watercolor that I'm coloring that bear with. And in the stamp set, I feel like there's a little boy bear, and then there's a little girl bear, because the girl bear has her eyelashes. But of course they could be whatever, I guess, right? And so I was coloring this one as the little girl bear, so I give her some pink cheeks, using a pink color from that same maker. So it's very simple here. So here I am trying to get some of that pink up out of that pan, and then I'll just dab it into her cheeks. And sometimes when I'm adding cheeks like this, like rosy cheeks to an image, because I'm working wet on wet, you can see, oop, it really started spreading there. So I dried off my paintbrush, and then I tried to get more control over it. And then I can also dab up some of that water with my paper towel and soften it that way. And now it's not going to spread and move so much. It's still going to move a little bit, but not as much as if it was really soaking with water. So drying off the paintbrush and picking up some of that water helps a lot. And then you can also just use your paper towel and dab up some of that water as well. So now I'm coming in and coloring in the other little bear, kind of like a little black bear, using this dark gray color and adding that shading, keeping the shading kind of towards the bottom of the bear, just like I did on the bear on the right, and letting that softly fade up towards the top of the bear. So most of the shading will be at the bottom. And I'm telling you, like, that is my favorite part right there, is when I bring in a lot of pigment and I just see that it just starts to spread and blend into the image. It just makes me happy. That is like one of my favorite things about watercoloring. So if you haven't tried it, I hope you will. It is really fun to watercolor stamped images, and sometimes I forget how much fun and how much I like it. So you may be seeing a lot more watercoloring of stamped images here. I would love to know what you think about that. If you want to leave me a comment, let me know if you mind if I do more watercoloring here on the channel with Maker Forte stamps and products. Alright, so I'm looking at it and thinking that I'm pretty happy with it. I'm going to check the bottom of where I painted that grass. So checking it with my fingers, I can tell if it's still wet. If it's cool to the touch, the paper is still wet, and so it's still going to kind of move around. But I did want to add a bit more shading to the underneath of the bears just to create more ground for them. And it was dry enough that I knew that it wouldn't like just blend into the paper and I wouldn't have that like defined shadow. So that's it. That's all the coloring, the watercoloring. I put it on a size A2 card base, popped it up with some dimension. I added my sentiment and a little heart there in the middle of the bears. Added some details with a white gel pen, but I kept it the size of the card base. I didn't trim it down, and I really like the way that it looks. Plus, I have such a hard time adding panels that I trimmed down straight that I was like, I'm just going to keep it the same size, and it worked out for me. So I love the way that it turned out. I hope you do too. Thanks so much for watching. You can see the supplies listed in the box below if you want to check any of those out. I am an affiliate, so I get a small percentage if you use that link. I really appreciate it, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks so much. Bye.